this thing would actually interact with humanity or care about humanity.
Yeah, I've used the argument from divine conceptualism because divine conceptualism is something that presupposes basically that God interacts with us at least by the fact that we can possess knowledge in the first place. Let me pull it up.
This, yeah, all right.
I haven't used it in a while, so it's just sitting on one of my notes on my phone. Where are you at? There we go.
Mm-hmm.
So truths are, premise one is that truths are propositions that correspond to reality. That's definitional.
Mm-hmm.
Premise two is that propositions are inherently mind dependent and they exist as contents of thought or intellect, which is the ontological premise.
Mm-hmm.
Conclusion one is that therefore, if necessary truths are, or that therefore necessary truths are mind dependent. Sorry, that's from P1 and 2. P3 is that there exist necessary truths like the law of non-contradiction that hold universally and cannot fail to be. That's just an axiom of modality. P4 is that contingent minds cannot ground necessary truth. Conclusion one is that necessary truths require a necessarily existing mind to exist eternally and universally. That's from P3 and 4. And then conclusion two, therefore, there exists a necessary mind that grounds necessary truths, which is commonly identified as God, and that's from P5 by necessarily implication. All of these things
Mm-hmm.
combined, if you're able to conclude the fact that basically whoever this God is something that possesses a mind, and it's something that he would possess as a will, so he would then therefore possess a will. And then if he possesses a will, then therefore if creation exists, it has to be something either he willed or he's not all-powerful and basically couldn't have control over creation in general. So then therefore he had to have willed creation in some way, shape, or form, meaning he had an intention for that creation.
So if I was like a necessitarian, right? How would you like argue that?
Like that
Like
God
God doesn't have
necessarily
like a
created.
free
Like,
will. He necessarily created. Yeah.
so you would say that the universe is eternal then by that case as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would honestly just say that, like, due to the fact that that leads to like a pretty bad infinite regress of things existing, that you wouldn't actually be able to reach the point of the necessary being at all, because you'd have to basically have infinite amounts of contingencies, so you can't actually stop at the necessary.
Infinite amount of what?
Well, so
No, we
for
take.
example, if the universe itself is eternal, the universe is contingent,
Hmm.
right? Like in a general sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So if the universe itself is contingent in a general sense, then therefore if you're trying to make an argument for any form of necessary being, it's impossible because there's an infinite amount of contingent regress that just occurs to where there's no way to stop at the necessary being.
No. No. So contingent here would mean would you say failed to exist or would you say
That it had
dependent?
that it had the ability to exist, or that honestly I would say I'm okay with either one. It depends on the context we're talking
Hmm.
about. Could
Yeah.
fail to
So if you
obtain,
use the
we can do that.
yeah. So yeah. Okay. So if we use that, right, we would say it's basically like I think both the definitions work, right? So we would say contingent would just be something that's basically ontologically dependent on something prior to it, right, or higher to it. So if there's an infinite list of contingencies, this doesn't really disprove that
But you can't
this
get to the
infinite set
necessary being that
is.
causes it.
No, you can, you can.
You
So
can't because there's an
I'm just.
it's an infinite like circle in a way of contingent things. So you can't actually ever get to the point where there is a necessary thing that causes that.
Yeah, so it's the circle itself, right? Even if it is eternal, right, or infinite, would be ontologically dependent on the uncaused cause or the necessary existence.
Yeah, let me put it like this. Right?
Yeah.
Because like let me put it up here in my schizo painting. Right? So if you basically have like an infinite regress, because eternal universe does necessitate an infinite regress to agree. To a sense, I'm sure you would agree with that, right? Is that if there's basically
Mm,
an infinite regress of things that are contingent by itself, And then there is basically this right here, like the monad, which is, it kind of sounds like the type of thing you affirm, like the necessary Neoplatonic monad. Is that something that you like? Are you like
Yeah, yeah, I agree
Ismaili
with
or something?
Neoplatonism. No, I'm not Ismaili, but I agree
Okay.
with some sort of Neoplatonic model.
Okay. So if you're making the argument for God's existence in any sense regarding necessity, of this being the necessary being, right? That in order to be able to actually suppose that contingency leads to necessity, you'd have to be able to actually find a starting point to all contingency, and you can't do that if there's an infinite regress of contingencies.
Yeah, because we're referring to the whole set itself. We're talking about simultaneous cause, not like a temporal cause, right? That's the different distinction when we make the argument
Yeah, but
for
if
the
there's an
necessary
infinite
existence.
Yeah, but if there's an infinite amount of effects or manifestations of whatever the monad is, then you can't actually denote a difference, right, between like what the monad would be versus what the actual objects that exist would be. That's why it would be unknowable. You wouldn't be able to know
No,
this.
no, you would, because it's about simultaneous causation. So I don't know if you know the distinction between like temporal causation and simultaneous causation. But simultaneous causation would just be like there's the rays of the sun, right? They are ontologically dependent on the sun, right, for their existence. But there's no actual like time that you can say like the rays came about after the sun or something in like a temporal sense. Like it was simultaneous when the sun existed, the rays came about like almost instantaneously, right? That would be like the explanation.
So let me put it like this: like, is there ever a time where the monad exists and this doesn't, in any sense?
Ontologically, yeah, prior, logically prior, yeah.
Ontologically or logically? Because like you can't both, like in your
It can be
system.
both.
But if it's ontologically prior, then that means that there was a literal situation where this circle wasn't even going.
The circle wasn't going.
The contingent, like the infinite regress of contingent objects. This right here, if it's ontologically dependent on the monad, then that means that the monad had to go from not doing this to doing this.
No, it's always doing it. That's the whole point.
So then it wouldn't be ontological. You'd have to say that it's just a logical priority.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So if it's just simply a logical priority, right, then it's not something that actually denotes the ontology of these two things. So if you have all of the stuff in contingency and then you have the monad in necessity, then how do you actually show that there is a distinction between these two things?
Yeah, one is the necessary cause and one is
Uh,
the necessary
You're
effect.
you're
That's the
saying it's
distinction.
necessary. You're saying that this is necessary. That's the thing that's in question. How do you actually come to the conclusion that thing is necessary if the contingencies are also infinite?
If the contingency, yeah, because it's the cause. It's the cause
I,
of the effect,
I don't
right?
think you. I don't think you're
The
tracking what I'm
effect
saying.
can be
I'm not trying to be
infinite,
rude, but
right?
what?
Yeah, go ahead.
No. So like you're making a claim here that the monad is the thing that is necessary that denotes all of the contingencies, right? The thing that denotes the necessary thing as necessary in the first place is the fact that it causes all the contingent things and that it is in the state that it's in. The state would be, like what, infinite or pre-existing? What's the actual property that this monad would possess that doesn't automatically purport to the contingent things as well?
What's the property that the monad have that
Yeah, like what
is
kind of
not?
property or attribute or something like that could we basically apply to the monad that I can't automatically just apply to the contingent thing as well? This is kind of like a Leibniz problem.
The one or the monad, I don't know what the monad is, but the one from Plotinus would be
That's monad, yeah.
complete. Yeah, 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 the monad would be have no multiplicity, right? And it would be absolute unity insofar as that there is no distinctions between anything in the monad, right? So it's one ontology,
Yeah, but just
and the
saying that
contingent
there's
things will have multiple distinctions and multiple existence.
Yeah, but saying that there's distinctions, for example, for all things whatsoever, right? You'd have to say that the monad. So this is going to lead into a different problem now. So the way that you just worded, let me get rid of all these freaking schizo things I made. So when you're talking about, for example, the distinction that we have is due to the fact that the monad is simple and the contingent things are not, right? Then therefore you'd be falling into this thing called the problem of the one and the many. Do you know what that is?
No.
This was basically the demon of the Platonists, of the Neoplatonists and the Platonists, is that if the monad necessarily has to create, or in any way, shape, or form, or that it naturally flows outwards things that are distinct from each other, then therefore, if this thing is simple, then in some way, shape, or form, it has to have the fundamental nature of also being multiple, but it doesn't. Because you're saying there's absolutely no distinctions in any sense to the monad. So then therefore, how is something that has no ontological existence to multiplicity in any sense, then therefore lead to things that are contingent in here that are distinct?
Yeah. So after the overflow, right? We believe that it creates the nous, right?
Yeah,
On
the
the
world
first
soul. Yeah, the world
creation, on the
soul.
first intellect, right?
The world soul. Yeah.
Yeah, the first intellect, right?
Yeah.
There's no actually. It's actually still simple, right? We don't believe it's has multiplicity. The only distinction that comes about is like a conceptual distinction between like the knowledge and the knower, right? And for the
Yeah.
monad or the one, there would be no distinction between knowledge and the knower, right?
Yeah, I understand that you guys would hold
So,
a purely logical
so
distinction in terms of the monad itself. My point is that if there is no form of multiplicity that's fundamental to the monad itself, then how is it causing things that are not in any way, shape, or form about its ontology?
because everything that's produced by it or basically coming about from it, right, is not gonna be the full version of it, right? It's like an emanation of the thing, but it's not the whole thing itself, right?
Yeah, I know that you would say that it's an emanation of the thing. But the problem is that if the monad has the ability to create emanations of itself to the point where there's things that are distinct from each other in reality, then therefore the monad has to be fundamental in some way, shape, or form to that. That can't be something that it just does, because it has to be proper to its nature to be able to actually perform something that's multiple, to perform multiple emanations. If there's no distinctions within the thing itself, then how is it causing those effects that way?
There's no distinctions. How is it causing the effects?
No, I'm saying if there, I'm saying I may have said it like that. I'm sorry. If there's no distinctions within the
It's
thing
okay. It's okay.
itself, yeah, you're good. If there's no distinctions within the thing itself, right? Then when it causes multiplicity, you have to say that in some way, shape, or form. There's no distinctions in it, but it does naturally have the ability to cause things that are distinct by itself, but it's not proper to its nature. The monad's nature would simply just be simple by itself, right? And there's no multiplicity that denotes it at all. So then, therefore, if anything distinct exists, then therefore it's making something that is not in any way, shape, or form tied to it. This is actually one of the arguments for the necessity of the
See.
Trinity, because the Trinity actually solves the problem of the one and the many.
Ah, I see. Yeah, I haven't looked into this. I'll have to look into it.
Yeah, there's a couple papers that exist on it. I can't remember exactly which one now that I can think about. But
Problem
the
of
problem of the one and the many, and you can look at Plato and Plotinus's issue with this, because it's one of the few
Alright.
things that they didn't address.
Yeah. I'll look into it.
Other Deacon Ed
Uh,
Nice has a
and
pretty
and
excellent
you're
paper on the
saying
one in the many.
that this problem is basically where you would like use the Trinity to come to a conclusion, like a Trinity is necessary or
A
something.
Trinity would be necessary logically from this, because of the fact, or a
Yeah.
multiplicity in the God we're talking about. Because if multiplicity can exist in the world, then it has to, in some way, shape, or form, denote the way that the actual necessary being exists in some way. Otherwise,
So